And we should be live. Welcome everyone. I'm just gonna give it a minute until I can see you guys in the chat. If any of you were completely new to me, if you've just randomly clicked on this video, this is a live stream from Waterloo in London. A lot cooler in town tonight, says Julie. Yes, it's the end of the summer. Well, at least it feels like it today. It is raining little drops. I hope it stops. Sam, I can confirm I do not see those little crowns in Prism. So you can only see them into the YouTube app. Right, if any of you was completely new, if you don't know what's happening, we've got about 10 minutes. So we'll go through a live little walking tour in Waterloo. But we've got about 10 minutes before we start. We're just waiting for everyone to connect. So this is a live, there's a live chat. Hi Shas, and welcome everyone that just joined. Let me know in the chat that you can hear me properly. And welcome Natasha, nice to see you here. If any of you are watching me on replay in the next few months or in the next few days or weeks, oh, it's starting to rain for real now. I'm gonna try to go into a shelter. I might be kicked out, but let's try. So yeah, if any of you are watching me in the future on replay, you can also replay the chat. It's an option. If you are on a computer, it should be underneath the video. So if you want to see exactly what I'm reacting to in the chat, you can also have the chat replay. It used to be more or less automatic, but now you have to select it. You have to open it up, just in case. Right, is the sound okay? Let me know in the chat if you can all hear me properly. You might have told me already, but I might have missed it. Hi Claire. And welcome everyone that just joined. Perfect, thank you Sam. So before anything else, let's test the microphone together. Most of you know the drill. I'm gonna tap the microphone 3 times. You should be able to hear the tapping. Let me know in the chat that you've heard that. Yes, Tish, it's new, but it's already broken. Look, I've already got one little button that's lost its fluffiness. First wash. Thanks, Zara. When I was at the shop, by the way, I was going into the changing rooms, and there's this little guy, a Filipino staff. He was like, "I know you, I know you," and I didn't know where he knew me from. He was like, "Yeah, you stand by the Tower of London in the morning and you said, 'Welcome guys, you'll be with me today. I'm Natalie. We'll be starting at 8:15. He was one of the cleaners, former cleaners of the Tower of London. Genevieve, yes, I'm afraid so. They're probably just sleeping, but yeah, they don't look very well. Thanks, Natasha. Thanks ever so much. Apparently, they do some scientific studies. You know, if you see someone that was that looked a bit unwell like this, and if they were wearing a suit, everyone would rush towards them. But if it's someone that is not well dressed, we just assume they're high, or you know, when actually they could be unwell. But as a society, we just don't do anything. We just it's crazy, really. But it's how we behave. Is PayPal better? Claire is asking. It is a little bit better in terms of commission for me, but to be honest, if you are more comfortable tipping on YouTube, it's fine to me too, because YouTube would take a little bit more, but I suspect it might improve the algorithms. I suspect the more money the video makes, the more they'll promote the video or the live. So if you prefer to tip on YouTube, that's absolutely fine with me. Cool. Let me check how long we've got. We've got 8 minutes before we actually start. Thanks, Natasha. It's always amazing to have a little boost of confidence before the tour. So yeah, 8 minutes. We're gonna try to go through the station because there's a little monument I wanted to show you inside. We might or might not be kicked out. So what we'll do, they don't really like people filming in the train stations in general. If the moment I get inside, what I'll do is I'll stop talking, because I've noticed the best way not to be kicked out, it's to stop talking, because if you loud with a microphone and you're obviously filming, they usually kick you out. If I stop talking, they probably won't notice me as much. So I might point a few things with the camera and I'll explain as we get out. And it's raining for good now. Oh well, luckily I've got the umbrella. Welcome everyone that just joined. Yeah, I hope he's sleeping, Patricia. I hope it's just asleep. And welcome Samantha. Welcome everyone that just joined. So we've got about 6 minutes to go. If any of you were completely new to me, if you're watching us live, do make sure you say hello in the chat. And for those of you that are watching the replay in the next few weeks, if you hear me reacting or saying some random stuff, it might be because I'm reacting to something that happened in the chat. And also, if at any point through the tour you start hearing some wind noises, don't be shy, not be shy, let me know in the chat. Hi Mark. It's a bit windy tonight. I've got a professional microphone, so you shouldn't be able to hear any wind unless it gets disconnected. Because I've got all those little connections, so it can easily get disconnected. So don't be shy. We don't want you to have a rubbish sound quality, so do let me know in the chat if that happens. Right, let me know, let me see what time it is. 5 minutes to go. I'm gonna flip this camera around for now in case you are a bit bored of my face, just to show you a bit of the view. You know what, let's go and see if it's still raining bad, because I'd like to show you oh yeah, it's still raining. Right, let me show you very quickly, oh no, the entrance to the station, because it's quite pretty as well. So this is the entrance to Waterloo Station, but I'm gonna go straight back into the shelter because the rain is quite bad. I'll get the umbrella out as we are on the other side, but oof, I got the gimbal soaked already for nothing. Well done me. So yeah, we've got about 4 minutes to go. We're just waiting for everyone to connect. So we are by Waterloo Station, one of the busiest stations in the UK, really. I think number one might be Liverpool Street, although this one feels much busier to me. I used to commute through Waterloo quite a lot when I worked in Clapham Junction. Especially when I worked at London Bridge, when I was a zombie for a scare attraction. Hi Pauline, and welcome everyone that just joined. So we've got 4 minutes to go. 4 minutes. As you can see, still fairly busy at this time, although it's no longer peak hour. You still have some people going home from work. They might have stopped at the pub on the South Bank before to take the train home. And Linda is here. Whoop whoop. Nice to see you here. Claire, we are in Waterloo Station. Waterloo. Named after the battle, of course. Which is quite ironic because you used to have the Eurostars living from here. So that used to be the station from where you'd go to France. And of course, Waterloo is named after when the Brits beat Napoleon. Right, let me flip this camera around for a sec. Let me see what time it is. 3 minutes to go, guys. 3 minutes. See, the gentleman is alive. They've moved. So we've got just a few minutes. So as we start, what we'll do is we'll go straight into the station. I want to show you the Windrush Monument. We talked about it when I did a tour in Brixton. It's a new memorial monument that's inside of the station. I won't be able to tell you too much as I film it because I don't want to be talking too much in the station to avoid being kicked out. I'm hoping to cross the full length of the station, but I'll explain a bit more as soon as we are out. I hope the signal will stick with us as well because it could be a bit busy in there. And welcome Luna from Oregon. Nice to see you here. So we should have about 2 minutes to go. 1 minute. So today it is the 15th of July, 2025. If it's no longer the 15th of July for you, you're probably watching the replay. Hi Martin from British Columbia. Nice to see you here. So we've got still 1 minute. So feel free to interact in the chat. Don't be shy. Don't be worried about distracting me. It is my job to decide how much attention I pay to the chat, really, and it's my job not to get too distracted by the chat. So don't be shy. Just get to know one another as well, if you'd like. Still 1 minute. It's a long minute, that one. And let's see. It is officially time to start. It's 9:30 p.m. UK time, and without further ado, let's go and explore Waterloo. For the ones that don't know me, I'm Natalie, and I'm sure most of you would have already noticed my accent, but just in case, if you haven't, if you were still trying to place it, and if you were like, I think she might be from Liverpool, well, no, I'm French. Right, let's go. So once again, as we are in the station, I'm gonna be semi-silent, and I'll tell you lots of dark stories as we are out. And the rain is getting even worse now. Waterloo Station has been enlarged lately. This is... Some people are just paranoid. Did you see the lady hiding with her arm? Anyway, whatever. Let me show you the monument. Maybe she's having an affair. Maybe she doesn't want to be seen in the station because she told her husband she was down in Manchester or something. Anyway, this is the beautiful Windrush Monument. So that's for the Windrush generation. So the Windrush generation, it is the generation of migrants that came from mainly from Jamaica to rebuild the country after the First World War. It also comes with a little poem, "You Called, We Came." Because, you know, after the war, Britain had to be rebuilt. It had been dramatically bombed, and a lot of people came to help rebuild the country. Now let me show you. All this part of the station here is fairly new. They have a new Wetherspoons and everything as well. Right, let's take another quick look at the beautiful monument, and then we'll go straight through before we get asked to move. Sadly, the Windrush generation, it is also a scandal. Some of you might have heard of the Windrush scandal. Basically, a lot of those people that came in at the time to help work and rebuild the country, sometimes they came with their kids on ships like the Windrush. And some of those kids would have come on their mother's passport at the time, and some of them never really got a new passport. And 40, 30, 50 years later, some of them were accused of being illegal immigrants. In 2012, the government decided to do what they called the hostile environment. So it's just basically making life a bit harder for anyone that was not fully British, let's say. And some of those people that had been here for 50 years, they had a job, they had a mortgage, they had they had everything. They had family, they had kids, grandkids, great-grandkids sometimes. Suddenly they were accused of being illegal, and some of them were deported. Luckily not too many, but yeah, there was a bit of a scandal, and I think at the time of Theresa May, they had to publicly apologize, and compensate some of those people. And it's after that they commissioned the monument. It's been here, well, it was finished in 2022, but it was commissioned in 2018. So it has nothing to do with through the Black Lives Matter movement, some of the statues of slave owners and stuff were questioned, and Sadiq Khan decided that we should have more statues of people of colors, and that has nothing to do with this monument, because this monument was already commissioned at the time. Now, this is the four-faced clock. This is one of the biggest meeting points, or the most common meeting points in the country, actually. A lot of people, when they travel down to London, they give each other a little appointment under the four-faced clock. Now, down that side, you've got platform 19. In the 1930s, there was a little bit of a surprise on platform 19. But I'll tell you as we are out. I'm gonna try to get out before I'm being asked to go. Usually you need permission to film in a train station. I don't blame them. I know why. It's because of securities, because you could be filming the fire exits and stuff like that, and so yeah, we are nearly through. We're going all the way till the exit straight ahead. And let's see how the rain is now. I do hope we might just have dodged the rain, but I might be dreaming. It's probably quite bad. You'd rather meet in the Waterloo. I'm not even sure they're free-ish. In some stations they're free, because if you have to pay to go and meet someone, you probably don't want to go to the Lulu. Okay, let's go straight out, because no, I'm just going through. You don't want me here? Yeah, I'm going.
I was just filming and things like that.
Okay, I'm just going out now. If you don't need, don't worry. Thank you. See, I told you they don't want me here, but that's fine. We've got the exit. So we've made it. Now let's see if it's raining badly. Yeah, let me get the umbrella. Bear with me 1 sec. I'll get the umbrella out. And off we are. Right, so hold on. I just need to swap hands. Bear with me. Right, there we go. So yeah, on platform 19, in the 30s, I think it was 1935 to be precise, the cleaners on the train, it was a train going from Twickenham to Waterloo and then back out to Twickenham, they found a very suspicious package on board of the train under the seat. It was a pair of legs that had been cut off from a body right above the knee. Male, a young male, probably between 20 and 50, they were not too sure. The legs were interesting because they were shaved and the toes were kind of like curved in, like if that person had been wearing shoes that were a little bit too small. Was it someone that maybe was dressing up as a female and wearing tiny little shoes? We just don't know. The cut was quite good, almost surgical, really. So they actually, at the time, they didn't even know if murder had been done. It could have been a medicine student doing a prank or anything, because it's a weird place to dispose of a body. on a train in one of the busiest stations in the country. And the police didn't know, they had no clue. They investigated the paper, but they couldn't find, the wrapping paper, but they couldn't find anything really. And eventually, though, there was a torso that was found in the Grand Union Canal around Brentford, that's not too far from Twickenham, where the train was coming from. So it was assumed it came from the same body, but even that wasn't quite sure because, at the time they didn't have DNA and stuff like that. And the torso, the cutting was not well done. So, why would a killer be very surgical with the legs and quite bad with the torso? There were a few long hairs found on the torso, like if someone had been wearing a wig, or if maybe they had been placed there. We don't even know that either. And that was it, really. They did assume that the torso came with the leg. The killer or killers might have potentially planned to dispose of the legs out of the train windows. Because at the time you had window. I mean, today we can't really open a window on a train, but at the time, there was a possibility. So, who knows? It's still a mystery today. We still don't know who the victim was or who the killer was. Now, there's another murder that was somehow connected to Waterloo Station. It is a murder we've mentioned before. Some of you might remember when we went to Eastbourne on the south coast. It's the case of Emily Bilby Kay. Emily was in love. She had met a gentleman called Patrick Mohan. And she had withdrawn all her money and sold her actions to move to start a new life with him. He was going through a divorce, allegedly. And she was going to start a new life with him in South Africa. So she'd got all her money in cash and she'd gone to meet him in Eastbourne. She wasn't seen again, but she wasn't really missed by her colleagues or anything because she was starting a new life anyway. Well, there was another lady, her name was Jessie. She suspected that her husband might be having an affair. And she decided to investigate because if she was going to go through a divorce, if she had any proofs of the affair, that'll be a little bit easier for her. So she looked through her husband's jacket. And in the pocket, she found a little ticket for a cloakroom here on the south part of Waterloo Station. At the time you could leave, you had a luggage facility, in the train stations. Well, you still do today, but they're very expensive today. Most people don't use them. So there was a cloakroom ticket, so she decided to come and investigate. She gave them the ticket and she found a large bag that carried the initial EBK. And they looked through the luggage and they found, so she had involved a friend of hers that was a former police officer. They found a lease for a little bungalow in Eastbourne on the south coast, quite isolated, far away from the town centre, on the way to Bexhill, really. And also pairs of bloomers, those old-style knickers, I guess you could say. Very bloody, very, very bloody, very dirty. And a knife with some blood as well, and some fat that looked like human fat. Then the former police officer decided to involve Scotland Yard. So the police was, they had a feeling that they might be coming across a murder, but there was no evidence of murder at all. It was just a bloody pair of bloomers and other items of clothing. And it could have been an illegal abortion, it could have been anything. They decided to close the suitcase back, to give it back to the cloakroom. Sorry, I'm just struggling with the cable here. Yeah, to give it back to the cloakroom and to wait for the guy to come back. Eventually, Patrick Mohan did come back. So he was stopped by the police. And at that moment, they still have no idea who the victim was and stuff, but they decided that they wanted to go and investigate that place in Eastbourne, and they found out in the cottage there were quite a lot of evidence, and they actually found the dead body. Well, part of it. He had cut her off. He had tried to burn some of her. I mean, it was a butchery, because he had a new mistress, you see, and he wanted to get her into the cottage as well. And he had actually had a lovely little weekend with his mistress, his new mistress, Hazel. The body was there. Hazel had not smelt anything because of the well, she had a bit of a cold, so she didn't actually smell anything. And let me show you. So that's Leek Street Tunnel. That's where we're heading to. At first, the killer, Pat Mohan, tried to claim that it was an accident, that Emily had got annoyed and she had attacked him with an axe, and then she fell down and she hit her head on a very cold, a large cauldron. That would actually kind of make sense with some of the evidence in the bungalow. So then the police was a bit worried, because at that point he could have got away with denying a proper burial, and that's it, you know. But eventually they found enough evidence to convict him of murder, because not only did he had rented a bungalow in the middle of nowhere that used to belong to the Coast Guard, you know. On top of that, he had rented it for many weeks after the crime, when he was meant to be in South Africa with his lover. He didn't have a passport anyway, and eventually the knife and stuff which he used to dismember her, it was bought a couple of days before the murder, so that completely disproved the accident, because otherwise, you know, why would he have got all those knives and stuff? So eventually he was convicted of murder, and he was hanged at Wandsworth Prison. So quite a nasty killer. And all of that because of a wife that decided to investigate and look through her husband's pockets. Anyway, see the little sparkly thing straight ahead in the middle of the screen now? That's the top of the Shard. So that's, you know, the skyscraper on the South Bank, 303 meters high. Anyway, let's go and take a look into the Leek Street Tunnel. So it's a tunnel where anyone can come on spray. So straight art. I'm just going to let those people go first. The art can be very, very, very different from one day to another. Today, I've just walked my route earlier, so today it's a bit, it's a lot of graffiti writing, really. Sometimes you have some more elaborated murals. Sometimes it's more graffiti writing. So very different, but still quite cool to see. So let's go down. I've got to be careful because it's a little slippery down here. There we go. So this is the famous Leek Street Tunnel. I'm gonna have to be careful not to go too deep into the tunnel because I know there's a spot where my internet kind of dropped down a little bit. Let me show you the ceilings. Very often the ceilings are actually nicer than the walls. So what happened here is the tunnel used to belong to the Eurostar, because the Eurostar, before to leave from St. Pancras, as it does today, it used to leave from Waterloo. So that was from, I think it's 1994 to 2007, it would leave from here. And then, well, the tunnel was already pretty much disused. There used to be a taxi rack, and some people used it as a wild toilet through the night. And eventually in 2008, Banksy, the famous Banksy, decided to do something with the tunnel. He did what he called the Cans Festival. Cans, like a spray can. Let me show you the poster. So that's the poster for the Cans Festival. So it's obviously a little pun on the Cannes, the film festival. And anyone could come and paint, and this is still the case today. Let me remove the picture. So anyone whether you are experienced or not, you can grab a spray can and come and paint the walls. The vault here, that's a little theatre. They also have a theatre festival in, I think it's in September, the Vault Festival. Usually, see what they've done here, for example. Usually it's not very nice to repaint someone partially. You know, you should come with a big paint roll or cover everyone and cover everything and then start again. But here, really, the rules don't really apply because anyone can come and try a spray can. So it's not really like if they were going to make enemies in the art world, because they probably don't even know the rules and the codes. Let me show you the ceilings, because they're often quite cool on the ceilings. You're not entirely sure you'd go down there? Oh, it's quite safe. I don't, I mean, not feeling funny down here, it's fine. Sometimes it smells a bit toxic though, because when you have a lot of artists painting at the same time, sometimes you can smell the fumes. A lot of those artists don't actually wear a mask. They should, because some of those cans can be a bit dangerous, really. Coming back. Hopefully we are back now. According to the system, it's telling me we are back. I do apologize. I knew that I was going to lose the signal if I went too far. And I did go too far, of course. Are we back? Let me know in the chat that we are indeed back before I say. According to the system, we should be back. Let me know. I'm going to try not to say anything too interesting before you tell me that we are back. So still today, anyone can come and paint, unless you're painting something racist or homophobic or whatever. Back, perfect. Thanks everyone, thanks for letting me know. And let's get out of the tunnel. Let's go and see the site of the Necropolis Railway. So the Necropolis Railway, that was a train station for the dead. Well, if you followed a lot of my tours before, you probably know we talked about that quite a lot, that in Victorian times, a lot of people moved into the capital. The population of London doubled and then tripled and then quadrupled. And a lot of people died into the capital. So those little graveyards around the churches, they got completely saturated with the dead. So that's when they had to open those huge commercial cemeteries on the outskirts of London. So you probably know the Magnificent Seven. We have explored together quite a few of them, you know, like Tower Hamlet, West Norwood, Nunhead, and Brompton. So those were commercial cemeteries opened mainly in the late 1830s and 1840s. Same way. Okay, it's telling me that we are good now. I'm just gonna wait until you confirm that we are back. I do apologize. I don't know what's happening because usually I've got a very decent signal there. I'm back, perfect. Thank you guys. Thank you for letting me know in the chat. I'm not too sure what you've missed. So we were talking about those magnificent 7 cemeteries that were opened on the outskirts of London. And what happened is in 1849, we had two Richards that decided to create the London Necropolis Railway. So that was basically, they wanted to buy a piece of land outside of London where they could bury thousands and thousands of dead, millions even. I mean, the original plan was 28 millions, which was, I mean, it's crazy, really. They buried nowhere near those figures. But before we go much further, see this little church tower there? That's the Lincoln Tower. It's a church that was bombed through the Second World War. Only the tower survived. And after that, they built an office block. And apparently they had a huge issue with the lift. People kept getting stuck in the lift. I think that was in the 70s. The lift engineer kept being called every other day. And eventually, even the lift engineers, they were like, I think it's a ghost, I think it's haunted. And some people were like, that's probably what happens when you build a tower block or an office block on a graveyard. And eventually it was so bad that they had to get rid of the lift. And then that solved the problem. But yeah, back to the London Necropolis Railway. So those two Richards, they bought a very large piece of land in Brookwood. So that's in Surrey. That's about, I think about 30 miles from here, just outside of Woking. And they created the Brookwood Cemetery, a huge cemetery. But how would you take the bodies there? We didn't have the cars yet. So that's why they created the Necropolis Railway. The first version of it was actually in the tunnel where we were earlier, and then they moved here. The gateway right across the street here, that's the old entrance for the Necropolis Railway. Let me show you the picture. So that's what it looked like at the time. The facade only have survived. The station itself was bombed, so we don't have much left of the station. And let me show you their logo, because that's a bit creepy as well. That was the logo of the London Necropolis company. Anyway, bear with me. I'm just gonna remove the photos. Everything is harder with an umbrella. Bear with me. There we go. So yeah, they had those trains leaving London, taking the dead all the way to Brookwood. But we had the Bishop of London didn't want all the religions to be mixed together. So you had the part for the Anglicans and the part for the dissenters. Even when you arrived in Brookwood, you had two stations, the Anglican station and the part for all the other religions. In Brookwood Cemetery today, you still have, you've got a part for the Muslims, you've got a part for all different religions. Actually, Dodi Al-Fayed was buried there, Lady Diana's lover, until he was moved to where Mohammed Al-Fayed used to have private property. Anyway, just so you know, I'm gonna have to go back the way we came from, so I'll well, you know what, I'll keep talking, and then I'll if it goes again, I'll repeat everything you've missed, because I'm not even sure it was really the signal, because usually it's good there. So we'll try again to go. We'll have to go through the same way anyway, otherwise we'll do a large detour. Anyway, so the Brookwood Cemetery, some of you have been there with me. You might remember I tried to do a little live there at the time of Hago, but the signal wasn't great, so I've never been back again. It's a huge cemetery, but it's nowhere near as busy as they would have expected, because even at the time, a lot of people did not really want to go and be buried so far away from their local parish churches. And what happened with the trains is that, so the train would leave in the morning and come back late afternoon for the burials or for people to go and visit their loved ones as well. These new buildings, there are some new buildings this year, not all of them, but there are some newer ones, yeah. And at first, the local people, they were not really excited about the idea of having this huge cemetery. But then they built a pub by the station. So once they knew there was a pub, they were like, okay, fair enough then, because they had a pub for the burials and all that. And would you believe, with the Victorians, the class system was the most important thing. It's funny that you can still hear me now. That's exactly where the signal cut earlier. I'm literally exactly at the same spot, and it's fine now. This is so weird. Anyway, sometimes I wonder if it might be something else happening in my phone, so notifications from whatever apps or whatever, because I'm literally standing at the same spot, or maybe someone tried to call me or whatever. Anyway, so yeah, those trains would go, and in the train itself you had different class. So even the dead, they had a class system in Victorian times. Yes, wet London is so pretty. It's not very convenient for me, obviously, but I know it looks much better on camera, especially at night, you know, with the reflection on the wet floor, the shiny pavement and all that. So yeah, those trains, they would have the class system. Well, the class system was not only for the trains, it would go with the burial. So first class, you'd be in the station, you'd be first class, you'd have some velvet everywhere, you'd be at the front of the train, and then the burial, you'd be able to choose your location in Brookwood, and also you'd have to place a monument with the first class. Second class was much cheaper, but then you didn't have to put a monument, but if you didn't place a monument, then your grave could be reused. You know, usually when you buy a grave, it's about 75 years and stuff. After that, they've got the right to reuse it. And third class was much, much cheaper, but then you couldn't put a monument and you didn't choose the location at all. And they might, they'll reuse your grave after so many years. Now, you might have heard of Brookwood Cemetery because, well, there are a few famous residents, like Gordon Duff Cosmo. You probably don't know the guy, but you probably know his version in the Titanic movie. That was the guy that was accused of bribing his way into a lifeboat. You know, in the Titanic, there's a character that he kind of kidnaps a little girl, because when you have kids, you can go into the lifeboat. Apparently, that was actually inspired by Cosmo Gordon. The guy really existed. To be completely fair to him, his name has been cleared, but I think the first lifeboat, they had a capacity of 24. They left with 12. Some said that he had paid them. Anyway, so that guy is buried there. We also have two criminals that we talked about in some of my tours. Amelia Sash and Annie Winters, I think the other one is. You know those baby snatchers, not snatchers, those baby farmers. I've not heard of baby snatchers yet. Those baby farmers that we talked about them when we did a tour in Angel. One of them was very stupid. She moved in as a lodger with a police officer. You know, when you are a murderer, why on earth would you find a police officer as a flatmate? You'd have to be dumb. So yeah, those two, they were originally they were hanged. They were some of the very few ladies that were hanged in the 20th century, and they were originally buried in Holloway Prison. But when they did some work on the grounds of Holloway Prison, they removed those bodies and they reburied them in Brookwood. Somehow they have a monument. I have no idea who paid for their monument. Anyway, that's a cool pub. I've never actually been in, but every time I walk past, I'm like, oh, I want to go and see the deco inside. And so you've got those two ladies, and you have a lot of people that have been reburied in Brookwood. When you go down to Brookwood, you've got Lambeth, you've got Southwark, you've got all those different London districts, because what happened is very often when the local parish churches were completely saturated, what they'll do is they'll buy a plot in Brookwood to bury their local dead. And for some of you that are from Britain, you might also have heard of Brookwood, because there was a show on the BBC a couple of years ago called Britain's Biggest Dig. They dug up two Victorian graveyards. One was St James's, where Euston Station is today. They had to do some new platforms and stuff, so they had moved some bodies. And another one in Birmingham. So the show is filming those archaeologists looking through the Victorian graves, and all those bodies that were featured in the show, they've all been reburied at Brookwood. So it's a huge cemetery. They even have a spot for natural burials. It's not really natural. I mean, you're not allowed to be buried without a coffin in this country, but you could be buried with a soft coffin. So no monument, nothing, just buried in the woods. And it is huge as well. So if you happen to be a serial killer and you lived in Surrey, if you were looking to dispose of a body, I would recommend you bury it in Brookwood. No one would notice. It's so big. And but if you get caught, don't tell the police I gave you the idea.
Who's going to buy this? Well, the question is, you're trying to say, how do I buy
Exactly, Martin. Why is the lighting is in the sky? Pisas is asking. I don't see any lighting. I think it's just the clouds. There's. To be honest, Pisas, it's much more obvious on camera than it is in reality with my eyes, because those cameras, they're so good nowadays that the aperture on the ISO is so high that you actually catch much more light on camera than visually. So I think it's just a cloud. Are you taking note, Linda? Well, hopefully you won't be killing too many people. Anyway, talking about murders, there are a few more local murders I need to tell you about tonight. But before we do, see the beautiful building behind the traffic light there on the other side of the road? This is the Old Vic Theatre. It used to be called, because it was actually from before Queen Victoria, I think it's probably 1818 or 1828, maybe 1818, I think. At the time it was called the Royal Coburg Theatre. Coburg like Saxo, Coburg, Gotha. The Prince of Coburg, I think he was the first king of Belgium. Anyway, and then eventually they renamed it the Royal Victoria, because Victoria was not old quite yet. And then eventually everyone started to call it the Old Vic, so eventually it became its official name, the Old Vic. But it also had, a little nickname at some point. It used to be called the Bass Tub, because apparently some of the plays being played in there were so bloody that, let me cross wide we can. So yeah, so that's why they deserve that nickname. It is also haunted apparently. They've got two ghosts. One ghost, I think his name is Eric Ross. He was a young actor that died, after the First World War. When you had the Spanish flu, apparently from one production of Brutus, 4 actors died of the Spanish flu. They were replaced, of course, but the first performance, apparently a lot of people in the audience died, so apparently he came back. It is also said that they have the ghost of a lady she's kind of like almost begging, or with her hands up, with bloody hands, fake blood, like actor's blood. Some say it was the ghost of an actress that played Lady Macbeth. Who knows? Anyway, interesting theatre. And there's a lady that might have once been a regular at some point. A lady. Is it buffering again? Oh no, man. Let me move. I don't know what's happening tonight. We usually have a very decent signal over here. Right, I'm gonna keep moving and you tell me when it's better. We're back, okay, cool. Not sure what we've missed, but I was telling you that in the Old Vic Theatre they have a couple of ghosts. One ghost might be an actor that died out of the Spanish flu before he could be on stage. He had been replaced, and apparently through the first performance, a lot of the audience actually spotted him on stage. Way back, perfect. Thank you very much. Hopefully that won't happen again. Let me see. I have a feeling I might be able to remove the umbrella. Yes, let's try. I think the rain has stopped. I see a little parapet here, so bear with me one sec. I'm just gonna pop you down as I put the umbrella away, okay? I don't know how long this is gonna last. We might have to take it back out in a sec, but let's do this for now. All right, and off we go. Right, so there's a lady that might have been at some point familiar with the theatre. It is a lady called Eliza Grimwood. Eliza Grimwood, she lived locally. We'll go and see where she used to live in a moment. She was a young girl, very pretty young girl from Suffolk. She was from a fairly poor background, and I think I'm gonna have to put the umbrella back up. Sorry, I got a bit overly excited, but it's still very much raining. There we go. Right. So yeah, she was from a poor background, and her dad had passed away. She was fairly well educated, actually. She stayed in school until the age of 15. That was quite good for a lady of her class. But then eventually her mum was like, okay, you've got to go to work now to help me. And she took a job as a lady of company for a family with a little girl that was, she suffered from some disability. We don't know what. So a lady of company, today we'd probably call it a carer. You know, she would be paid to stay with the young girl and take care of her. And at that point, Eliza started to have an affair with the older brother, so the young man of the family, and she fell pregnant. Now, we talked about that in a lot of my tours before. You know, at the time in the early 19th century, if you fell pregnant out of wedlocks, all your prospects of life, career, marriage, everything would be gone. We talked about that even just last week, you know, in Brookwood Cemetery, when we talked about the Jane, the poor girl that was murdered there. And so what happened is her lover decided to take her down to London for an illegal abortion. So he took her down here, and the little beep, he actually dropped her. So he didn't come with her to the abortion. He gave her a bit of money and he dropped her in London. She never came back to Suffolk. We don't know why, maybe just the shame of admitting what happened. We think at that point we don't know exactly what happened, but we think she started to have an affair with an actor here in London, and then a colonel in the army, and then eventually potentially a robber as well. It is said that she was helping him doing some robberies, and that she nearly got caught by the Bow Street runners, and then she would have given up on him on the robberies. And eventually she started being a sex worker. Now, talking about sex workers, we're coming back down here next week. We'll go to the other side of Waterloo to talk about Thomas Neil Cream, a serial killer. And one of his first victims was actually over here. She was a sex worker that passed out right in front of this pub, the Wellington. So remember that for next week. For now, back to Eliza Grimwood. So she started to sell her body. Now, if you followed many of my tours before, we talked about prostitution many times, but mainly talking about Jack the Ripper. And would you believe in Victorian times there were classes even for prostitutes? Those ladies that fell victim of the Ripper, they were destitute. You know, they were more or less all homelesses, and they were really struggling with money. Eliza was not. Eliza had some. I do apologize. Eliza had some fancy costumers. She was actually nicknamed the Countess because she dressed very well indeed, and in terms of safety as well, it was probably much better for her, because those ladies, they would be much more selective with their customers. They would take fancy men that would take them out for a date first. Today we'd probably call them an escort, you know. So it was not only about sex. It was almost like a long-term relationship with their customers. And some of the girls doing that actually were doing that for a few years, hoping to save money, to then open a legitimate business, you know, a cafe, a pub, and then have a so-called respectable life in the future. As far as we know, for Eliza, it seemed like she somehow enjoyed it. And it's at that point that she ran into her cousin, William Hobart. They were first cousins, but they ended up being lovers. Apparently, they were already sweethearts when they were young. Now, Hobart was actually married, but he kicked his wife away and he moved in with Eliza. obviously Hobart was not massively excited about her job, but she refused to quit, and he had to go along with it, you know. And he potentially also benefited from him. He potentially also benefited from her selling her body. By the way, across the street there, you had at the time a hotel called the York Hotel. That's where the inquest into her death happened. But little spoiler alert, we are not there yet. And so anyway, one night Eliza went down to the Strand Theatre. It's on the other side of the river. For those of you that know London, or some of you that have been with me, you might remember we have a ghost station, a ghost train station called the Strand. It used to be on the Piccadilly line. It's no longer running today, but the entrance is still there. That's about the spot where the Strand Theatre used to be. At the time, so we are in the 1830s, at the time those theatres were full of sex workers. The theatre owners were okay with that as long as they behaved, you know. And Eliza was one of them. Let me show you the church. So this is St. John's. They still have concerts and stuff nowadays, and they actually have a homeless charity as well in the graveyard. This is the very graveyard where Eliza was buried. She doesn't have a monument. She probably never did, you know. She wasn't that rich. But yeah, she made a decent amount of money. So she lived in a building behind me. I'll show you the site in a moment. A 3-floor apartment with William, so with our lover Hobart, as well as Mary Fisher, a maid, and another Mary, a sex worker as well, with her boyfriend. So it was 5 of them in the flat altogether, plus a little doggy. And that night she came back from the theatre. At the theatre, she had met a customer of hers, a foreigner apparently. No one was quite sure whether he was French or maybe Italian. He spoke good English, he did, but everyone agreed he had some kind of an accent. Good-looking man, young man. And she had introduced him to some of her sex worker friends at the theatre. Then they called in a hackney cab, you know, those horse and carriages, taxi cabs. And off they went. They came down here. Eliza paid for the cab, so she did, not the customer. She then pet the horse, the cabman. She said, "Oh, you've got a lovely horse." She seemed absolutely fine, you know. And then she left with the customer to go home. As she turned up, she got home. Mary Fisher, the maid, was still awake. Mary saw her with the customer, but the customer was wearing a hat. She didn't see much of his face at all. And the night was quiet. The dog did not bark. And early morning, probably about 5 a.m., Hobart noticed that Eliza's room was a little bit open. He knew that he should not just simply enter the room because she could be still with a customer. He was used to that. So he pushed it very slowly. He was like, "Eliza, Eliza." No answers. So he pushed a bit more. "Eliza, Eliza." And then he stepped in a pool of blood. At first he couldn't see the body quite yet, but the room had been ransacked, probably to fake a robbery. And then eventually he found Eliza in a pool of blood. He got a bit of blood on his shoes, on his trousers himself, but that's to be expected, you know, when you run into a pool of blood. And he screamed, "Eliza's dead, Eliza's dead." So everyone woke up, everyone came down. At first, the first pathologist actually concluded that she would have taken her own life, which was ridiculous because she had some stab wounds in her back, you know. And so, of course, very quickly a big murder inquiry started. Now, it didn't really look good for Hobart, mainly because of their situation, you know, mainly because he was partially living out of her sex work. So people were quick to judge. let me take you down Rupert Street. This is a how do you call it? Preservation. Oh, there's some for it. But anyway, it's a historical preservation area. It's pretty much exactly the same as Eliza would have seen it. It's nothing has changed apart from maybe a few antennas, you know, on the roofs. John Ruppel is the one that had everything designed over here. That's 1828, and that's pretty much the same as it was at the time. It's been used in several movies, like The Craze, the movie about the Craze, James Bond, EastEnders, and a lot of documentaries as well. Because if you want to do a period drama, suffragettes as well, I think, it's pretty much perfect because there's literally nothing in the background that shouldn't be here. Conservation, thank you, Sam. That's the term I was looking for. I gave up. I was like, I'm never gonna find it. Conservation area, thank you. And I shouldn't be too loud because all those buildings are protected. You know, they're all grade 2 listed. Very often they don't have double glazing, so the sound of my voice can be quite loud for them. And anyway, so yeah. It didn't look very good for Robert at first, but you know there was nothing wrong in this witness statement. But this, I'm gonna try to get the umbrella out again. I think this time I can. I bet it's gonna be quite typical. I bet if I take it down, it's gonna. Let's try again. I'm gonna pop you down here. There's a window frame here. Can I do this? No, I'm gonna pop you down the floor. Bear with me. I'm just gonna, I think this time we're good. I think this time it has stopped. I might be completely dreaming, but bear with me. I'm gonna be just 1 second. I'll just pop this away and then I'm all yours. Don't go anywhere. Talk to one another. And here we are. Cool. Perfect. So, the problem with the investigation is that, well, first, the Metropolitan Police was fairly new. We are basically in the first year of the reign of Queen Victoria, and the Metropolitan Police was less than 10 years old. They didn't have a full detective system quite yet, and the police was actually working very hard to build up their reputation, you know. But the thing is, there were so many terrible witnesses in this story. You had well, even in Eliza's loved ones, some people were a little bit, let's say, questionable. She had a niece called Harriet Chaplin. Harriet, she hated Hubbard. She made up full-length stories that he had a knife and he was very jealous of a costumer. Eliza had a new costumer in Birmingham, a sword maker, and she was in love with him, and Hubbard was very jealous. Oh, thank you, Linda. That's very, very much appreciated. It is really thanks to your generosity that I can keep going, you know. And I'm going to be honest with you, the tips have kind of dropped down a lot lately, so every little helps. So thank you very much. So yeah, so you had this little witness that was not great. There was another one, Catherine Edwin, a girl that pretended to be also a sex worker and a good friend of Eliza. She said she was 19 years of age. And she said she knew the foreigners. Yeah. She'd been with Eliza for coffee with her and the foreigner many times. She could recognize him. Yeah. So she walked down the streets of London with a police officer pointing the finger at many men, and eventually the police officers were getting crazy because she'd be like, yeah, it's him. And eventually at the inquest, it was exposed because Mary Fisher and Mary Clover, the other one, the best friend, they'd never heard of that young girl. So they were like, how can she be such a good friend of Eliza if we've never heard of her? And then it turned up through the inquest that the girl was actually 16 years old. And when she was exposed as a liar, she, I quote, she did a hand gesture to the magistrate. I don't know what finger or what hand gesture, but that doesn't sound very polite. And So yeah, those two terrible witnesses. There was another guy, a guy that was Welsh that claimed that he had woken up very early that morning and that he saw a bird coming out full of blood coming out of the door, and allegedly a bird was like, "I did the deeds," which sounds quite ridiculous, right? But at first, the police had to follow any leads, and when they investigated that Welshman. He lived very locally with a lot of young starving kids, a lot of young girls. He pretended they were his girls, but they realized that they were not. They were very young sex workers. So he was kind of like a Welsh Fagin. So another very bad witness. Then you had the letter, the Cavendish letter, very probably a hoax. A letter that had been sent to the shop that was next to number 12 Wellington Terrace. That's where Eliza lived. So the Cavendish letter, it was a guy pretending to be from the Midlands, pretending to be the customer. So he said, "Yeah, I'm the customer. I'm the one that left the theater with Eliza. I did come to her place, but the thing is, Hobart was very jealous. We did not do anything. I did not get any sex. I left. The guy was jealous. He had a knife and blah blah blah." That was very probably rubbish, and actually later on, the police found out it was rubbish because they were able to trace the guy that wrote the letter. But sadly, that was enough for Hobart to be arrested. So William Hobart was taken to Horsemonger Lane prison. That's in Borough. Some of you might remember we've been together there when we talked about the Manning case, the Bermondsey horror. That was through the tour about Catherine Eddowes that we've been there. Anyway, so he was taken to Horsemonger Lane, and as he went to prison, Eliza's brother, the brothers, they came back from Suffolk, and they had an auction. They sold everything that was in the house. Everything from the bed that was blood-stained, so it sold for £61, to the carpet. Then the guy that bought the carpet, you know what he did? He actually cut off little squares to sell them to people as a souvenir. I bet the brothers were probably quite jealous that they didn't think about doing that themselves. And the dog, the poor little doggy was, the little doggy that did not bark, Eliza's dog, he was sold to a pub in Spitalfield, the gun. Some of you might remember, we've seen that gun in my Jack the Ripper tour. And actually, when Hobart came out of prison, he really, really struggled to get his dog back. So that's quite sad. And when Hobart came out, he was released eventually, but his life was over. I mean, people on the street would throw feces at him or whatever it might be. No one trusted him, although he was very probably innocent. He actually died I think 3 years later he died. And allegedly on his deathbed, he actually saw Eliza. It happens a lot when people pass away. Sometimes they see their dead loved ones. So that's what happened to him. So poor William, he could really never come back to his home and never have a normal life again. Udisa, I'm not sure which pub you're talking about, but the one we saw on Rupert Street it actually dates back to 1828 as well. The one that we just saw now, I'm not sure, but probably quite old as well. Anyway, Eliza Grimwood's murder was never solved. Actually, well, at least until the Jack the Ripper story, the term Eliza Grimwood was a bit of a byword for murder mystery, really. It was really, although the police never gave up. Even the police officer that worked on the case, his name was Charles Frederick Field, he never gave up. Although he retired, he never gave up. He was a great friend of Charles Dickens. Let me show you the prices if you wanted to buy a home here on Rupert Street. How many bedrooms have we got here? So that's 1,700,000. I don't see how many bedrooms. Oh, 2 double bedrooms. So that's on Rupert Street, isn't it? Yeah. So if you want a listed building, there might be some negatives about buying a listed building because when you have to do some repair work, it could be very expensive because you'd have to use the materials of the day, so you'd have to use some specialist traders or builders to help. In some countries, I think, including my own, I think when you have a listed building, you have a bit of help from government. I'm pretty sure it's not the case in the UK. So if you want to buy a listed building, you want to be careful. You want to take that into considerations. Anyway, back to Eliza. Although her murder was never solved, at the time they really didn't have much of a concept of a serial killer. They still believed at the time that killers had a motive, whether it was robbery, jealousy, love, whatever. But just killing for killing and killing in a series, it just hadn't really happened yet, And so the police potentially didn't investigate the other murders of the days as much as they should have. Now, there are some people that did research since, including John Bedison, a gentleman that wrote a full book. It's called The Ripper of Waterloo Road. He did a lot of research on the case. He's found out, oh, thank you, Linda, yes, if you have a chance to leave a little thumbs up, that really helps with the algorithms. You know what, let's cross, there's no one here. So they found out that there were a few cases of other murders that might or might not be linked. A year earlier, there was another Eliza that had been murdered, Eliza Davis on Frederick Street. It's next to King's Cross Station. She was killed in her bedroom as well, above a pub where she worked. So she worked as a bartender, but she seemed to have a fair amount of money. So it is very possible that she might have also sold her body at the same time. She was gone to bed with her boyfriend that was described as French. So, could it have been the same? That's me now. And could it have been the same murderer? Very possibly. Although, there were already a lot of foreigners in London. People tend to believe that immigration is new. It's not. At the time, we were talking already about 40% of London that would have been born abroad. So surely you had thousands of French or French speakers, because he might not be French. But yeah, it could be linked. There was another gentleman, Mr. Westwood, that was a watchmaker. He was also killed, and some of the watch were stolen. He was known to hide a lot of money inside his flat. He did not trust the banks, and two men were seen running out of the flat. One of them was Swiss. They believed that the killer had escaped to America. They actually sent a police officer to America to investigate, but he never came back. He probably did find them and then probably decided to share the money and stay in America. Who knows? So that could be linked as well. And the other case that might very well be linked, it's another murder a couple of years later. It was the murder of Lord William Russell. We also mentioned that when we did a tour in Mayfair. He was an aristocrat that had a lot of servants, of course, and he was one night found dead on his bed, and all the servants were investigated, but none of them carried any blood spots on their items of clothing, and he had a staff, François Benjamin Courvoisier. The guy was from Switzerland, but from a municipality that spoke both French and Italian. And at first the police didn't have anything against Courvoisier, but they had noticed that he had hidden some of the expensive items. Thanks, Sophia. The expensive items that belonged to the Lord in the home, in the idea of selling them later. And also, eventually, they found out that there was some cutlery, some silver cutlery that had been sold to a hotel in Leicester Square, a French hotel, and that could only have been Courvoisier because he used to live to work and live there, and eventually he did confess. So he confessed to killing the Lord. He was taken to Newgate prison. We still don't really know how he did it, to have no blood on himself, but he owned the Macintosh. So people believe that he might have used his Macintosh to protect him from the blood spats. So he did confess he was a murderer, and at the time that was enough. One murder, you'd be hanged. So you might as well confess the other murders, right, if you're going to be killed anyway. And actually, you know what? It was said that in Newgate prison, he had confessed to 2 more murders, including Eliza Grimwood and Eliza Davis. The Times newspaper actually published it. You know, the Times was a publication that had a good reputation at the time. Now, a couple of days later, the Times newspaper had to apologize. They had to retract the article. Apparently, he had never confessed. We don't know whether he did or not. It is possible that maybe they did not want too many people to turn up at the execution, so maybe they pretended he never confessed to the other 2. Or it could have been his uncle, because his uncle had gone to visit him in Newgate, and maybe just to save the reputation of the family, he tried to convince him to retract his confession. We'll probably never know. What we do know is that he's quite a good suspect. He would have definitely fit the physical description. He definitely had a technique not to get bloody, and he spoke French and Italian, so, you know, maybe. He is a good suspect, a very good one if you ask me, but I don't think we should take his nationality or his accent for granted. I mean, it's not like if French people were rare in London at the time, because they were not, or French speakers, because he was not even French. Anyway, this is the Royal Hospital for Children and Women, and this would have been the site back in the day of 12 Wellington Terrace. So that's where Eliza Grimwood and William Hobart and Mary Fisher and Mary Clover, you know, because we all focused on Hobart as a suspect, but technically any of them could have done it. It could have been Mary Fisher, the maid. It could have been Mary Clover, the best friend. It could have been the other William, you know. It could have been anybody in this property. Anyway, so this was the site. The full row of Victorian houses have been destroyed, so we don't see the building now. Now it's a student accommodation. Those poor students, they probably don't know the terrible story that happened here. Well, stories, I should say, because Eliza is not the other victim here. At the Royal Waterloo Hospital for Children and Women, it closed, I think it's in 72, but there were also some dark stories in there. They had a physician that was very, very controversial. His name was Sargent. He, let's say he was a little bit too much into sleeping therapy. He had a narcosis room where ladies were put to sleep for weeks. He dealt with some anorexia cases and this type of mental health issues, but he would literally drug them to sleep for weeks. They'll be able to stand up to go to the loo, but they were completely drugged up. They were not conscious. Some of them completely forgot the rest of their lives. It was quite dramatic, actually. There was another doctor in Australia that was inspired by him that kind of copied the technique. But yeah, quite sad. And today it is still a technique being used, but not in medicine, more in social, secret services. I mean, it's called brainwashing. So they probably still use it today, but not officially, not something we know about. But yeah, because apparently stuff like that can erase a lot of your memory. some of the victims have given their statements years later. I mean, some of them have had terrible experiences. Anyway, so that's the students living inside at the moment. I hope they don't know. It's probably not haunted anymore. You know what? After the murder, they really struggled to find anyone that would move into the house. Obviously, that was a very infamous murder in the newspapers and stuff. And eventually, there's a German guy that took over the lease. He probably didn't really know about the case because he probably lived in Germany at the time. It's hard to tell, but yeah, he eventually moved in. And the murder, well, it might have inspired Charles Dickens. You know, when Oliver Twist, he was actually heavily criticized for the very violent way in which he killed Nancy. So you might, for those of you that don't remember the setup, you know, Oliver Twist. So Nancy is a character that is a prostitute. She has her boyfriend and pimp, Bill Syke, and Bill Syke is accused of her murder. Bill Syke has no blood on himself, but he's got a little dog that has some blood on his paws. The Oliver musical in the 60s, she's actually murdered in the Nancy Steps just off London Bridge. So you've got a lot of similarities. You know, you've got, well, here it's Waterloo Bridge, but in Oliver Twist it's London Bridge. He's got no blood on himself, neither did Bill Syke. And there's a little dog as well. So there are a lot of similarities. And also Dickens was a good friend of Charles Frederick Field, the police inspector. So I think it's fair to say that Dickens might have been shocked by this murder as well, and probably heavily inspired by the case when he wrote Oliver Twist. You'd be afraid of sleeping there, Sophia? That's why it's better not to know. If you don't know, you can't be scared. Well, unless you have any paranormal experiences, but otherwise, you know. That's why sometimes when I talk about murders in tiny little streets with those little Victorian windows, you know, single glazing, sometimes I'm like, ooh, I shouldn't speak too loud, you know, because if I lived in there, I probably wouldn't want to know. Or would I? I think I would, but I think most people wouldn't. Anyway, time to tell you about another murder. So this is Waterloo Bridge up there. It is also known as the Ladies' Bridge because they started the construction in 1939. So that's, of course, when World War II broke out. So a lot of the ladies, they were left in charge in London because the young men, they had to go fighting on the continent. And so that's why it's known as the Ladies' Bridge. Some say it was the only bridge that was finished on time. Probably not, probably a bit exaggerated. So this is the National Theatre to my right. And sadly, there's another murder that happened on Waterloo Bridge. Well, two murders. But the most infamous one, it is Gorgi Markov. 1978, so we are in the middle of the Cold War. Gorgi was originally from Bulgaria. He had left his country of Bulgaria because he had been, it's starting to rain again, let's go under the bridge. He had been heavily criticizing dictator Zhirkov. You know, through the Cold War, Bulgaria was one of the closest allies of the Soviet Union, really. And he used to be a playwright, so he had been criticizing the regime, so he had to go. He came to London when he took a job as a BBC journalist, and he was actually broadcasting to Bulgaria. He was actually criticizing communism still. And he knew he was at risk. He had received some threats. And eventually, one day, he was waiting up there on the bridge. He was waiting for a bus on his way to the BBC where he worked, when he felt a little sting in the back of his leg, like an insect bite. He turned around, he saw a man with an umbrella. The man jumped into a cab. And that was it. He didn't think much of it at first, but then he felt very funny. So that's where they sell those books over here. He felt, yeah, exactly, we are on the South Bank now. He felt very funny. At first he went to the BBC and he did tell them what happened, and he believed he had been poisoned. But at the BBC, It's not that they didn't take him seriously, but he had the reputation of exaggerating a lot. So they were like, yeah, right. And then he was like, that's it, I'm gonna check myself into hospital. He went to A&E in St. George's Hospital, and he said to them, I've been poisoned by the KGB. Now again, it's not that they didn't take him seriously, but you know, it's not every day that you've got KGB poisonings. He died in hospital. When they did the autopsy, he had a little pellet in the back of his leg, like this, a tiny little one that would have been used to store the poison, rancid. Oh, thank you, Sophia. That's very nice of you. And so yeah, he was indeed murdered by the KGB. What a coincidence! It was on the day of the birthday of the president Zhirkov, or dictator, one might say. He's got a little statue in Sofia now. So this is Gorgy Markov. This is fairly new. It's 2014, I think. And so yeah, he knew exactly what had happened to him. He was correct. He had been murdered. He wasn't the only one. There was another dissenter that had been targeted as well by the KGB. We know now that those umbrellas, they do exist. There's one in Florida. There's a spy gadget museum in Florida. So the umbrella was a gun with a little pellet that went into his leg. Now, let's take you to the other side. Hopefully it might stop and I can show you a bit of the London Eye. There's another murder that happened on the bridge. 1942, so the bridge was not completed yet. We're still in the middle of the war. That was actually, I think, 3 weeks before the bridge was fully open to the public. And there's a Canadian soldier, Joseph, Canadian from Quebec. He you know, through World War II, there were a lot of Allies soldiers coming through. He went to pick up a sex worker in Waterloo. You know, at the time, soldiers, especially when they had a heroic career, they were, let's say, a little bit more valued by society than the poor sex workers. So he picked up a prostitute called Peggy Richard. And she was actually called Margaret, but Peggy was her street name. They did their deeds in a back corner, in a back street, in a dark corner. Then they stayed together, they drank some more. And then he took her on the bridge. Let's see if it's still raining. Oh, it's okay. He took her on the bridge that was not opened yet, so they didn't even have the right to be up there. And some people heard people arguing. And then there's a security that spotted a man looking down in the river. He was carrying a lady's like handbag, but that was it. You know, nothing more suspicious. Then the security looked down the river. He didn't see anything, and that was it. An hour or so later, there's another soldier that spotted Joseph getting some money from a lady's handbag. And that other soldier actually reported Joseph, so they started to investigate him, and they found out it was Peggy's bag. So they asked him how he ended up with a lady's handbag, and he said, "Oh, there was a sex worker. She gave it to me, and she ran." And the next morning, only Peggy's body was found in the river. Of course, there were some evidence that she had been strangled anyway, but. Well, Joseph was tried and acquitted. It's a bit sad, but it happened a lot through the Second World War, especially when especially when the soldiers were from the Allied forces. You know, when they were from abroad. I think they're doing some filming here. I don't know if I could.
Oh yeah, filming.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if I can go through, but let's. So I think they're doing some filming in the skate park over here. Let's go through because I don't know if they want much evidence. So that's if you see if you see any movie with a skate park in the background in the next few weeks or months or years, you could say, yeah, I've been to the set. So this is the South Bank skate park. It is amazing that it's still here, to be honest. It's a free skate park where anyone can come, because it's such a pricey area nowadays. It's such a touristy area. It's amazing that the skate park has still survived, you know, because one thing that is not money related that can stay here, it's quite cool. Anyway, sadly there's a last murder that happened here as well. Very, very sad. It was not that long ago, I think 2004 maybe. It's the murder of David Morley. It's particularly sad because David was a gay man that had survived the bombing in the Admiral Duncan in Soho. Now, I don't want to tell you too much about the bombing because last time I talked about that event, I got demonetized on YouTube. YouTube doesn't like the T word. It was an act of tea. You know what I mean when I say tea. I'm not going to say the word, but it was an act of tea. A terrible bombing in a pub. I think 3 dead, but 73 injured. David was the pub manager. He had survived the event. He had helped the gay community recover and all the victims and all that. And a few years later, he had stopped working in Soho because he wanted to get away from alcohol. He had taken another job in another gay pub. It was actually a sad story because his adoptive parents, they didn't know he was gay. He didn't have the courage to tell them. And of course, when he had been all over the news after a bombing in a gay pub, obviously he had to tell his parents. And one night after a party, I think they'd been to Heaven. It's closed now at the Heavens, but it used to be a gay club on the other side of the river. He was here, sat on the South Bank in the late at night with his mates, another gay gentleman, when a little beep, her name was Chelsea, 14 years old. She came up filming him she was with some boys, so she put a camera in his face and she's like, hey, I'm doing a documentary about happy slapping, and they kicked him to death. So Chelsea did, the 14 years old girl. Then they went and attacked two other people, a homeless in the Leek Street tunnel as well, where we were earlier, but that was the only one that was killed, poor David. So completely homophobic, random, unjustified, I mean, he was killed for absolutely no reason by a very angry teenager. So he would have been sat somewhere here on the South Bank by the Hangover Bridge. This is the Hangover Bridge with the Jubilee Bridges. We talked about the Hangover Bridge recently. You know, when we were in Brookwood Cemetery, I told you about the case of Larry Donovan that lost his life jumping off a bridge, and then his friends or so-called friends kind of abandoned him. His body was found in Deptford a few days later. So this is the bridge he jumped out of. Well, the Hangover Bridge is the one in the middle. It's the rail bridge. On either side of the Hangover Bridge, you've got the Jubilee Bridges. Those are much newer. Anyway, that's going to be the end of the tour. Let me know in the chat if you have any questions before we go. Thank you very much for coming tonight. Anyone knows what the green light is? Are you talking about this building, Pisas? It's just a building lit up in green, or is it another green? Oh, I think you're talking about the Charing Cross station. Hold on, let me show you. Do you mean that one? That's Charing Cross. Well, that's the building on top of Charing Cross station. When is the next one, Linda is asking? Next, I think it's next Tuesday or maybe Wednesday. We're going, well, not far from here actually. We're still around Waterloo. We'll talk about the Lambeth poisoner. So that's Thomas Neil Cream, a terrible serial killer as well. as well as Charlie Chaplin and much more. So we'll explore the area of Lambeth. Thanks ever so much, Pauline. That's very, very much appreciated. And straight in the middle, you see the pink wheel. This is, of course, London Eye. London Eye, also known as the Millennium Wheel. It was built to celebrate the millennium, but it's such a fortune wheel that we decided to keep it. It was meant to last only 5 years, but we decided to keep it anyway. The London Eye, you know what, let's go under the bridge so you can see the eye a bit better. It's got 32 pods. That is to celebrate the 32 districts we have in London. We're very lucky in London. We have, we've got many different districts, and it's very different from one area to another. And that's why the eye has those 32 pods. When you go up the eye, you usually have with you in the same pod maybe 15 to 20 people. If you have money, you can privatize. So you could have a capsule for you and your family, or you and your partner. But if it was only 2 of you, well, especially if you looked like a couple, they usually don't let you go up alone. They'll send a member of staff with you. That is to avoid anyone doing anything too intimate. I wouldn't really think about it, but it looks like some people did, frankly. Anyway, let me just go down here to finish with a nice view of the London Eye. And still let me know if you have any questions in the chat before we go. Pisa says she has a family member that was a stage manager at the National Theatre. Thanks, Marilyn. Thanks, everyone, for coming today. Hopefully, I'll see some of you next week in Lambeth. So basically, straight down here on the other side, I'll show you my face again. And if any of you were completely new to me, if you don't subscribe yet, make sure you subscribe. It's the best way to make sure you catch me live, because it's very easy to miss those live. Very often we miss them, you know, and you end up watching the replay later on, which is cool as well, but it's much better to be there live and be able to interact in the chat. So the best way is to subscribe and then hit the little notification bell, so you get notified every time I go live. Cool. Thanks everyone for coming tonight. It's always a pleasure to have you along, and to have so many of you with me every time. Hopefully I'll see you next week. And if any of you dropped me a little tip on Buy Me a Coffee or PayPal, or if you were going to do so in the next few minutes, that's very, very much appreciated as well. I don't see them live, so I don't get the opportunity to thank you live in person, but bear in mind, it's very much appreciated. It is really thanks to your generosity that I can spend more time doing more tours and researching more tours and all that. So thank you very much. Hopefully I'll see a lot of you next week. If not, the week after, I think I'd like to take you to the South Bank, so the other side, you know, towards Tower Bridge and stuff. I've not scheduled it yet because I'd like to schedule it at a time when the bridge is opening, and I want to do it pretty much last minute, because those boats, they can always cancel, you know, because when you have a boat going through the bridge, you have to schedule an opening. A lot of them are already scheduled, but if I book it too far ahead, the boat might cancel. So I'll try to book it maybe a week ahead or so. So that'll be quite cool to go down that way, because we've not been down there in a while, really. Anyway, thank you guys. Have a great evening or a great morning, whatever time it is for you, wherever you are in the world. And I'll see you soon. Bye bye.